And also, okay, so we haven't, and also let me turn on my camera. Of course I can't find, okay. So we haven't had our webinar session since, I believe, before Drupal for Gov. So I'm excited to be back. This is our last webinar of the year, and our topic is Introduction to Layout Paragraphs by Justin Toupin. So before we begin and actually get into the presentation, I want to kind of share some information about Drupal for Gov. And even before that, I kind of want to thank our sponsor for the month for this webinar. It's amazing. If you're ready to build, run, and scale your sites and applications on a truly open source web ops platform, get in touch with Amazee. And another thank you goes out to our sponsors, because we couldn't do any of this without them. So about Drupal for Gov, we are a community of open source advocates, and we're interested in technology that is open source, in addition to Drupal. So we have our yearly conference. Our past one was October 13th through the 15th. We are currently in planning mode for 2022, and we hope that we can bring that and have that to be in person. We also participate in Drupal training days and half-day trainings, and hopefully once things settle down with regard to COVID, we can continue that in person, but we will communicate that through email. And we also participate in the Gov Summit at DrupalCon North America, and we do these monthly webinars every third Thursday at 3. So if you're interested in have any questions or interested in communicating with us further, contact us on Slack. We also have an email, drupalforgov@gmail.com, and we also have a Twitter account. If you miss any of our sessions, just Google the Drupal GovCon, and you will be able to pull up all of the sessions. We record them, as well as go and visit drupalforgov.us/webinars, and you'll see a list of past and present webinars. Our first webinar of 2022 will be from Salim from Dev Panel, and we'll have more information as we get closer to that webinar. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce today's speaker. His name is Justin Toupin. He is the CEO and founding partner at Aten Design Group. He started the company back in 2000 with a passion for technology and communications, a desire to do meaningful work, and an inspiration to help build a place where people love what they do. He speaks publicly about design and development process, working with clients, and the business of running a design company. And he also co-maintains several Drupal projects. One includes the Open Data, which is a Drupal distribution for marketing nonprofit programs. So now I'm gonna hand over the reins to Justin. And let me make you a presenter.
Thanks, Nika. I think I have it. I see the option in Zoom, okay. So I should be good.
Awesome.
Thanks for that. Thanks everybody for being here. Really excited to be talking again about some of the user experience work that we've been doing, and specifically some of the authoring experience work that we've been doing. Even more specifically with this module layout paragraphs. So I'm going to actually stop sharing my camera and start sharing my screen. Oh, and it looks like actually, Nika, I was incorrect. Screen sharing is not working for me. So I think I still need to be added as a, given permissions to do that.
Okay.
As a presenter.
Try now.
That looks like it's going to work. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, great. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. I definitely just got the notice that everyone can, so we should be good. So, all right, awesome. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. Really excited to be talking about layout paragraphs, and again, authoring experience, and specifically talking about layout paragraphs as a tool for making it really easy for content editors, specifically marketing folks and editorial folks, to publish content in Drupal. My name again is Justin. I work at an agency called Aten. We serve largely mission-driven organizations all over the world, designing and building digital products and websites. It means we do largely work that ends up being .org, .edu, and .gov domains, with a few other things here and there as well. Today, we're specifically going to be talking about layout paragraphs. I'll first just give a quick overview of what layout paragraphs is and what got us started working with this module and developing this module some time ago now. I want to talk a little bit about current status and adoption of the module, which includes where you can learn more and get involved with the project, download the code, etc. I'll demo our agency website, the aten.io website, and layout paragraphs as a part of a product called Mercury Editor, and I'll explain that kind of nuanced difference real briefly. On our website, there are some additional customizations on top of layout paragraphs. That's kind of wrapped up in the Mercury product. Once we've gone through that demo, though, we'll take a look at layout paragraphs on a fresh Drupal install. We will be looking at a Drupal 9, both websites, both our website and this fresh install will be Drupal 9. Everything we're looking at today applies to Drupal 8 and 9, unfortunately not 7 or before, and will apply to Drupal 10, of course, and versions moving forward. And then finally, should have plenty of time for questions. So that's everything we hope to cover today. By the end of this, the goal is that everyone has a strong familiarity with layout paragraphs and everything they need to get started with the module. Real quick, some things that'll be helpful, some concepts that'll be helpful to already be familiar with. These are not hard requirements, but just things that we won't be covering in detail. One is experience using Drupal. We're not going to be diving too far into kind of the very foundational concepts of Drupal. Experience with the paragraphs module specifically will be helpful. Some experience configuring content types, or at least knowing kind of what content types are and how content types and fields work together. Experience working with users, roles, and permissions. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the background of the module. So first of all, why layout paragraphs? So we started developing this module a couple of years ago, and the primary driving force behind this is that we wanted an expressive drag and drop content authoring tool that was really focused on marketing and editorial staff rather than site builders and developers. It was really important to us from the very beginning that layout paragraphs provides structured content. And what that means for us is that layout paragraphs works with fieldable entities. At the end of the day, it's based on fieldable entities, which is a really kind of strong concept in Drupal for providing structured content. There are other similar WYSIWYG solutions out there that provide a really great experience on top of just a blob input field and are more of a formatter for body text, etc. We wanted something that worked with structured content. It was important to us to leverage familiar workflows and configuration with fields, field widgets, and field formatters, again, concepts that are native to Drupal and that Drupal site builders will be really familiar with. We wanted something that does not require migration. I've started thinking about this recently and talking about this recently in kind of two ways. One is we did not want to require migration in order to adopt layout paragraphs and this easy drag and drop tool. We also didn't want to require migration should an organization decide to move away from layout paragraphs. So we really wanted something that was as simple as kind of turning the module on and configuring it, and that worked with paragraphs out of the box. And again, that you can remove from your platform with a minimal amount of work to kind of undo what's been done. Finally, and this is most present in version 2 of the module, we wanted to invest in a system that provides APIs for further improving the authoring experience. There are a lot of other modules that are built on or can be built on top of layout paragraphs, and we have a lot of plans for that. And some of that we'll see today with the Mercury editor stuff that I mentioned earlier. Let's cover the status real quickly, and then we're just about through these details, and we'll get into the demo. First of all, you can check out the code for layout paragraphs on Drupal.org, drupal.org/layout_paragraphs. There are 2 releases at this point. There's a stable production-ready release, version 1.0.0. There's also a complete rewrite, which is the 2x version of the module. At this point, we're encouraging folks to download and use the 2x version. Just download and use, adopt the latest beta for your project. Test that out, make sure it covers your needs. That should be ready for deployment though, including production deployment. Just a quick note about how we're managing those releases. There are a couple thousand folks, we'll see detailed stats for this in a second. There are a couple thousand folks, a couple thousand sites based on Drupal.org currently using layout paragraphs. The vast majority of those, right at 2,000 actually, or just above 2,000, are using version 1. Around the time that we hit 1,000 people reported from Drupal.org using version 1, we decided to tag what was then a beta release as stable, given the volume of bug reports had come way down and was really low. Since then, we've had a complete rewrite. There are now a couple hundred people using that rewrite using version 2. So not nearly as many organizations using it. The bug reports have, again, come way down. So the number of incidents we're seeing is super low. The really great thing about the 2x version is there is a suite of automated tests included with the module. So anytime code gets pushed, all of the kind of foundational functionality for layout paragraphs is tested automatically on Drupal.org, which again just keeps the quality of code and bug incidents report, well, bugs real low, quality of code real high. So again, encourage folks to grab the 2x version from here moving forward. And then finally, it's almost a moot point. We're hoping to hit 2x stable by the end of the year. Even with the holiday, there's just one final issue on Drupal.org that we just pushed a merge request for today. So we should have 2x stable real soon. Adoption continues to grow. As I mentioned, we're seeing on Drupal.org, according to Drupal.org, which is not a full picture, but is a good benchmark. It's about 2,400 people in total using the module. Again, over 2,000 on version 1 and a little shy of 300 on version 2. I mentioned Mercury, so just want to talk about this briefly. We've been working on a product called Mercury Editor, which provides effortless drag and drop publishing for Drupal. Mercury is specifically what we'll be looking at when I give a demo of the Aten.io site. There are a few customizations that Mercury adds on top of layout paragraphs. And I'll just talk through these really quick before we get into the demo. First and foremost, Mercury Editor is largely based on layout paragraphs. So all the drag and drop functionality and the really easy, again, drag and drop editing interface is provided by layout paragraphs. Additionally, Mercury makes use of stories, which is a module on Drupal that provides a library of component types or paragraph types. We're using a module called Style Options that provides a customized layout plugin, and we'll see kind of what that looks like as well, or what that means. But Style Options is what is providing all of the styles that you'll see on the Aten Design Group website demo. And on the Aten site, or with Mercury, we're using CK Editor 5, which is currently a contrib module on Drupal.org. A number of the folks at Acquia have been heavily involved in development there, and I think that's slated for production release, or rather slated for being pushed into core in a version real soon. Okay, that's it as far as some of the baseline information about the module. So let's dive in with a demo. Just get out of the screen here. Okay, great. So again, I'm going to take a look at the Aten website, the Aten Design Group website, as a way to demo the functionality of layout paragraphs. This is our main agency website. I'm logged into just the live version of the site. logged in as an admin user, as you can tell by the tabs, as well as the toolbar across the top. So I'm going to bounce over to the admin content section. One of the key reasons that we have been investing in layout paragraphs is to empower marketers and editorial staff to create visual, long-form content. And a really great example of that kind of content for us is case studies. So I'll jump into add a new case study. I'll use some of our work with the city of Boulder as an example here. I'm going to skip, I mean, this is just a normal Drupal content entry form. I'm going to skip all these fields. One thing we'll notice at the bottom, this is the content moderation state. Layout paragraphs is just a field on content, and as such works seamlessly with content moderation. So I'll leave this as an idea, which is just the very first state in our queue. It will also leave this content as not published. So I'll hit save. We immediately land on the View tab. This message is generated by layout paragraphs, by the layout paragraphs front-end builder field formatter. We'll take a look at what that means specifically when we get into that kind of out-of-the-box Drupal 9 demo here in a minute. This message is derived from the name of the field. So the field's called content, so it's just automatically populating that in here. If this was called content components or whatever, that's what would show up there. And it just says we haven't created anything yet. Start creating content. Start creating content, and we have a single option, which is to add our first section. Again, this is just a field attached to the case study content type, and we are now adding and editing paragraphs with layout paragraphs, of course, managing the layout and the drag and drop capabilities of the editing experience. I'm going to get started with a single column. Columns dropped in immediately in the interface. Inside the column, I'll click this plus, choose masthead, which is the most customized component type that we'll be looking at today. The others are really simple. This one's not terribly complicated either. Choose a title and subtitle. This integrates with media. I'm going to narrow these results down to Boulder images. Choose a couple of those. Place the images. Once that reloads, I have the ability to reorder these. I'll just rearrange that, not that it matters. And I'll leave the URL and link title as is, hit save, and that content is immediately dropped in the interface in front of us. So again, really expressive, really easy to use, a really clear representation of what you'll see on the front end of the site or on the View tab. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to edit some of the style options here. This again is not provided, this styles tab is actually provided by a module called style options. And then Mercury is providing some of the customizations that creates this look. That'll be clearer once we get into the simpler demo here in a couple minutes. I'm going to choose light on dark, choose a different background color, hit save, and it's applied that light on dark color scheme and given it a background color. And again, all those changes happening right here in front of us. I'm going to add another section. This time I'll add a 3-column. We'll just add some text in here. Bear with me while I grab some text. Click plus in the first section here, or the first region. Add some text. This again is provided by CK Editor 5, this edit in place capability. I can very easily just drop my text in, paste my text in. Let's make this a heading. We'll add a paragraph in the center here. And then we'll add yet another chunk of text over here on the right column. Great. What layout paragraphs provides is this drag and drop interface. So we can not only really quickly drop these components right into the interface, we can drag them around, we can reposition them. If we click, we can also use arrows to move them around. So with the keyboard navigation, I'm going to move this back over to the right. And let's see, I'm going to go back into our section edit interface, change some styles for that primary region, which is the leftmost region. All of those regions, the region names are based on configuration per site. So that can all be customized on a per site basis. This just happens to be what we call these things for our site. We give that first column some padding. We click back into the section one more time and change it from a 3-column to a 2-column. And because I've changed the number of columns, it's asking me what I want to do with the items that would no longer exist, because the items in the 3rd column would now be orphaned. So we're going to move those into the secondary, save. And so it's moved that final paragraph over into that second region as it changed that to a two region layout, 2-column layout. Great. Keep going. I'm just going to spend a few minutes here building out this case study. There's maybe a few parts that I'll skip. I'll at least get most of this in here. So let me grab some more text. Drop this text in place, talking about key challenges that we sought to tackle during the course of the project. Break this into paragraphs. We'll make this an unordered list. That's looking pretty good. Again, this integrates with another module called style options to provide some, well, style options. One of those that we've created custom for our use is this horizontal use designation, or rather horizontal list designation. Choose horizontal list, and that changes the style of the list. Again, we can see our work right in front of us. I'll choose a different background color for that too, just to make that look a little bit nicer. Hit save. Great. And there we go. Let's keep going. We'll add a section just above this one. In this section, we'll talk about the solutions to those challenges. Again, drop in some text, quickly kind of massage this text into the right format. Make that an unordered list. Heading. It's looking pretty good. We'll change that to that horizontal list style as well. Save. Great. That's looking pretty good. Solution should probably come after the challenges. So we can either drag this down just by grabbing it and dragging it. Sometimes that's a little difficult to do just because of the distance kind of down the screen. So we can also use these move buttons. So I'll just bump that down. And there we have the solution followed or after key challenges. If at any time I want to save my work and then see exactly what it would look like in the front end, I can do so. Just hit save and hit close to close the editor. We're immediately back on the view tab. That's all happening with AJAX calls behind the scenes. So refreshing the screen without actually having to refresh the screen, of course. I'll just add a couple more sections in here, and we'll go over to kind of the other half of this demo, the simple, brand new Drupal 9 website. I'm gonna add a 3-column section. Oh, well, again, let's see here. I'm gonna give that a background color as well. Of course, none of this has to happen in any particular order as far as choosing these options or editing these regions. Add a text blob again, or text paragraph with a heading. Once again, make this an H2, second level heading. And I just wanted to show quickly how slideshows work. So the whole concept here is anything that you create and drop into the interface, it's going to show you what you're working on immediately. So again, really looking for that responsive, expressive, fast, easy to use experience for content editors. So I've added these images just using the media library integration. This is also using, I believe, the Lightning media module. Hit save, which is not required, by the way. That's just what that particular field is using. This image is way too tall. Let's go back in and get rid of that one. So remove that and hit save. But there we go. We can kind of see our work taking shape right in front of us. And then I'll just add one more section to kind of round out this case study. This is now almost the same size and with the same content as what is live on our website. A few sections still missing. Let's see here. We'll go add a background image to the skyline. And no, we'll leave that as it is. So we've added our section along with the background image. That background image is again being provided by the style options module for the background image capability. I'm going to make this a 2-column layout. And in the second column, there's a secondary region, give that some padding and a background color. Make that white. See if that does what we want it to. There we go. So now our second region has a white background color. Insert some text. Make that all caps. CSS will do that for us.
Sorry to interrupt, but you're getting questions like, what types of paragraphs are you adding? Is it something that you configured earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And I should have said this at the beginning. I would love to address questions and maybe just address questions at the end. We'll go through, I'll show, that will become clear here in just a second when we take a look at how to configure this on a brand new site. Yes, the paragraph types are configurable. And I think we'll be through this here in the next just 5 or 10 minutes, and really kind of excited to dig into more of that. All right, I'm going to add a link here real quick. Oh, and one more thing I can do with that link is just say that that's a button, which adds that style. And again, the main concept here being, as you're adding content, you can see what you're working on right here in place. So let me save this and close. And we're well on our way to creating this case study. Again, hopefully that demos a number of the capabilities as far as really simple drag and drop content authoring. To answer that question again, yes, this is all based on configurable paragraph types and works seamlessly with the paragraphs modules. So just to bounce back really quick to these slides, if I go to the next piece here, let's see. So the demo, that was everything I have to show for the Aten website. I want to show what this looks like also in a brand new, very simple Drupal 9 website. And to create the demo that you're about to see, so the demo you just saw, there's some complexity to that. There's a number of modules. There's obviously a lot of custom theming that happened there. The website we're about to look at, the steps to get this working were first create a Drupal project with Composer and install Drupal. That's the latest version of Drupal or Drupal 9. Second, downloaded the Stories module, again using Composer. Third, downloaded the Layout Paragraphs module, again using Composer. Install both of those modules. Here's the drush command. You can install them through the interface if you prefer. And that's really it. So that's the entirety of what needs to happen to turn on everything in the demo that we're going to look at next. Okay, let's go over to this Drupal 9 site. So once again, we have here a brand new site. I think, yeah, the site's been live for, I think this was generated an hour and 6 minutes ago. Those modules, as I said, I have installed the Layout Paragraphs module and the Stories module. All the Stories module does is provide paragraph types for us. So if I go over to Structure and look at the paragraph types that are in the system, I did not have to create any of these myself. These were all generated by the Stories module. And so far, that's really all that's, I turned on the Stories module, it generated these, and otherwise, this is just what you get out of the box with Drupal. Layout Paragraphs has also been installed. To get Layout Paragraphs to work and to use it in the most sort of traditional, I guess, for lack of a better word, to use it in the most traditional way, the way most folks use it, you will need a paragraph type to serve as the section, the layout section for paragraphs. To do that, create a paragraph. You can call it whatever you want to, although section makes a lot of sense. Once you have created your new paragraph type, you'll just turn on the Layout Paragraphs behavior. That opens this field where you can select the columns you want to support, or rather the layouts you want to support. These are all provided by Core. The Layout API in Drupal provides a really easy way for developers to declare and create their own layouts, but I'm just sticking with these ones that are in core. I'll choose these 3 options, so 1 column, 2 column, and these 3 columns, or these 4 options rather, and hit save. That has created this new section paragraph type. I don't really need, I mean, I could add fields if I wanted to. I could give my section a title or really add whatever fields I want to, but it's not a requirement. It's not necessary. So I'm going to skip that for now. I'll go back to structure, to admin structure, take a look at content types. These again are the 2 content types provided by Drupal right out of the box. We'll hit manage fields on basic page. Add a new field to our basic page, paragraph field. We'll call this content. Again, could call that whatever we want to. And leave that as paragraph and unlimited. And then rather than choose which paragraphs I want, I'm just going to click exclude the selected below, not select any of these, which means all of these will be available. And we have our new content field. Now, just to make it really clear what that looks like out of the box, if I now go to admin content, add new content, and add a basic page, we have this paragraph, the normal paragraph interface. So this is what comes with paragraphs out of the box. The paragraphs field widget for adding whichever paragraph I'd like, and then managing those using that widget. To get, once we've installed layout paragraphs, we've turned on the behavior, we've chosen the columns we want. The next piece I need to do is if I go back to admin, structure, content types, back to my basic page, edit this new content field, or rather go to form display. And for the new content field, I just need to choose layout paragraphs as the field widget. Press save. We'll go back to our create basic page screen, refresh the screen. And we now have that layout paragraphs interface, which hopefully looks really familiar from what we looked at on the Aten website. Again, a lot of things that are different. This is, again, it's just Drupal out of the box with all the standard UI. But we have this layout paragraphs interface. Give my new page here a title, and then we'll start adding content. So this works in much the same way as what we were just looking at. We click the plus button, have a list of component types we can add. Section, again, is what we have configured as our layout paragraph section type by turning on that behavior on the section paragraph. So when I add a new section, it shows me the layouts that I had enabled, 1 column, 2 column, and the 2 different 3 columns. We'll choose a 3 column layout, hit save. That section is immediately added. And then from here, we can add text into the different regions. We can add images. The Stories media module also provides media integration, or provides integration between paragraphs and media. So it's, again, just a really nice shortcut for quickly enabling a number of we'll just grab an image in here. Snow, which is something we badly need in Colorado. Hit save. Great, we've dropped our image in. Again, drag and drop interface. I'll just throw another section in here just so this is all clear. Add a 2 column and put some text over here on the right-hand side. Okay, great. So now when I hit save, it's going to save this content and render this on the front end. One thing I haven't done yet, so this doesn't look quite right. And the reason for that is one thing I have not done yet is if I go back to admin, structure, into content types, basic page, I need to go over to the manage display tab. And for the display, I need to change this format from rendered entity, which is just the standard way of rendering all paragraphs. I need to change this to layout paragraphs. Save, go back to my test page, refresh the page. And now, while again, the styling isn't there, or the styling is very simple, this is an exact representation of what I wanted it to be. This little paragraph called left on the left, the image on the far right, this 2-column with, again, text in the right down here. We'll go back to the view tab just one more time. So that's how that works. One other feature of layout paragraphs, and specifically the 2x version of layout paragraphs, is the front-end builder formatter. And that's the experience for editing in the front end. So one dynamic with layout paragraphs is, by default, if you're editing in the back end, these paragraphs will not use the templates, any templates or customized CSS or any of the theming from the front end. So often this will look very different. The edit screen will look very different from the view screen. And we wanted a way for content editors to be able to see a closer representation of exactly what their content was going to look like. And to do so, we created a formatter that, again, you would go to admin structure, the particular content type, manage display, and then where you have format, choose the layout paragraphs builder formatter. Hit save. That does one seemingly simple, makes one seemingly simple change, which adds this edit toggle. Again, this is just the name of the field, which I called content earlier. So edit content. Now, if I click edit content, I'm editing this field directly on the front end. So now this is all picking up the front end styles. And what I see here in the editor is very close to exactly what I would see on the main view tab. So that's how that formatter works. And that formatter now, again, is just a feature. If you download the latest 2x beta, you can just turn that on. That's just a part of the model. I want to take just a quick look at some of the form display settings. And it's worth pointing out that these settings are available and managed separately between both the form and the display, which provides a lot of flexibility, and also can provide a little bit of overhead, because any settings, if you want them to be the same, they have to be duplicated from one to the other. I'll go back into manage form display, take a look at these settings really quick. So we just have a few options here. The first says what view mode, what paragraph view mode we want to use in that builder interface. If you wanted to, for some reason, customize paragraphs, maybe add in a label and a template, or make them look different in the builder interface than they actually do on the live site, you could do that by creating a custom view mode, and then you would choose that from this list. Most of the time, we just leave that as default. In fact, almost always. Second is maximum nesting depth. So one capability of layout paragraphs is nesting layouts. I'm going to choose 2 just to show how that works. But now what this means is I can put sections within sections up to 2 levels deep. Third, we can choose whether or not we want to require paragraphs to be added inside a layout. So right now, you do not have to, in the way this is configured right now, you do not have to add a section, or you don't have to add paragraphs into a section. You can add any paragraph type you want at any level. So if we wanted to just add a text paragraph at this main level, we can do that. And this is not inside of a section. This is just added in the list along with those other sections. That's useful if you're using this maybe primarily as just a drag and drop interface for kind of a more classic paragraph setup. But you could also have a drag and drop interface for your paragraph components, and then have something you just called columns, where you could kind of intermix text, content, or images, and then have, in that kind of same order, a layout or a layout paragraph. If I click on require paragraphs to be added inside the layout, hit update and save, then it's going to require, think of the best way. I'll just say this and then go back and edit it again. Couple really subtle differences now. Now I no longer have that plus button at the highest level here. I can only add a section because I've said that paragraphs must be added inside a section. It's worth noting that this paragraph because it already existed, it's not doing anything with that. It's not removing content or anything like that, or hiding content. But I can no longer add any paragraph I want to at this main level. I have to just add a section. Once I've added a section, that's when I can add content within it. And then also, as we just saw a second ago, I changed that maximum nesting depth to 2, which means now I can add a section within the section. So we'll do a 2 column that's inside this 3 column. And because I said that nesting depth is 2, I can add 1 more section. I'll do a 1 column this time. And because we've hit the maximum number, I can no longer add a section. So I've gone as deep as I can, and now I have to add some text. Or it doesn't have to be text, but some other paragraph type. Okay. That is just about it as far as settings and configuration for the layout paragraphs module. Again, as I said a few minutes ago, or just a few seconds ago, these same options for the form display exist on the field formatter. So the same options exist for that builder, and they are managed separately. So you can give your content, folks who have access to the editing interface, you can give them slightly different options if you wanted to. You could give folks with access to one and not the other the ability to nest things deeply, more deeply, or add paragraphs outside of the context of sections, etc. But those do have to be managed separately. One last thing that I'll just take a quick look at, and then I'll stop talking here and we'll open this up for questions and address all the questions that have been coming through the chat. If I go over to extend, there's one other module that I don't think I've turned on yet, which is, so the layout paragraphs permissions module. Once that's installed, this will take several seconds to do that. It's not too bad. Go over to permissions, go down the layout paragraph section. So the layout paragraphs permissions module provides 2 new permissions levels, or permission access points. One is the ability for your editors to edit the plugin configuration. On our site, the demo that I was showing earlier, that would limit access, that would grant or deny access to this styles tab. So it's the layout plugin configuration, which is what the styles tab is on our website. So that's the first permission. You can turn that on and off for specific roles. The second permission, you can turn on or off the ability for users to reorder components, so to drag components around at all. One use case is that you might have one role who can create layouts and another role that actually goes back in and edits that content. All of the permissions are based on a really flexible underlying system that allows other applications, if you wanted to create some contexts where someone could navigate or could reorder some paragraphs but not others, those kinds of more complex permissions are possible via custom modules built on top of the API. Okay, thanks for bearing with me. That is everything that I had to show for how layout paragraphs works, how it looks on a pretty well-developed, a much customized website with some heavy theming work, and then also how that looks right out of the box, as well as a number of the customization options for layout paragraphs. So with that, Nika, I'd love to turn it back over to you and address any questions.
Sure. So I think we have a comment and a question from Vitali, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but they said, we'd like to see some live websites using the layout paragraphs. And then they say, I think the main problem for that is creating components in theme files, isn't it? And this was earlier on when you were speaking.
Yeah, so I'd love to address both. So the first one is on the first, virtually every project that we are launching at the moment, that's under development at my agency, is using layout paragraphs. Actually, the Boulder, the City of Boulder website that I was showing it, kind of using as it was like 2 levels deep now, but that I was doing a case study of, is using layout paragraphs for some of their content types. So we have a number of client sites that are using it. I'd be happy to demo that more, dive a little deeper into that for folks that want to see more. Also just based on the stats from Drupal.org, there's a number of folks using the module at this point. As far as components, so components can means a few different things and can mean something very specific. That in the context of this demo, components is interchangeable with paragraph type or paragraph. We found that honestly, the word paragraph can be a little challenging or almost misleading in some ways for folks who are new to Drupal and new to the paragraph ecosystem. So when we talk about components, we're really just talking about paragraphs.
Okay. The next question, what types of paragraphs are you adding? I think I asked you this and interrupted you, but is that something that you configured earlier? And I think you may have answered. I don't know if you want to add any additional information to that.
Sure. So is definitely one of the goals of layout paragraphs, is that, again, no migration is necessary. So really all of the paragraph types that are in your site would be available to use for layout paragraphs. You don't have to create them. It doesn't matter whether you create them before or after you've installed layout paragraphs. Layout paragraphs is essentially just a field widget and field formatter that sits on top of a paragraph reference field. So it can be configured to work with any existing paragraph field you have on the site. And by extension, also works with any paragraphs you have on your site.
And the next question by Eric Walton, are there granular access controls to not only layout builder regions, but also to the paragraphs available to be added to those regions?
Great question. So, sort of. There is an underlying API that allows fairly simple development of custom access modules that would sit on top of layout paragraphs and manage kind of the permissions scheme in any way you want. So you could make that, you could build kind of a dynamic permissions handler that granted permissions based on a particular context. You can do that based on role, etc. The modules that provide for that out of the box would be a combination of that layout paragraphs permissions module, which really just adds two pretty simple permissions. One, to be able to edit the config, the other to be able to reorder paragraphs. And then in addition to that, paragraph type permissions, which is a submodule of paragraphs, that provides permissions for, provides real granular control over what roles can add what paragraph types. And that will work with layout paragraphs. So if you've configured it so that a particular role only has access to 3 of your 12 paragraph types, that's all they'll have access to in the layout paragraphs interface as well. A module that we're working on is a restrictions module that allows restricting exactly what paragraphs can be added within what regions. That's something we're working on. Again, the APIs are in place to make that fairly straightforward. In the meantime, something that a number of the developers on my team have been doing is just setting up 2 different paragraph reference fields. So if you wanted to have kind of a header section of a piece of content that had a different collection of paragraphs available than the content section, you'd set those up as 2 different fields, each with, configured with their own kind of collection of paragraph types. So hopefully that makes sense and answers that question.
Okay, and then you have a quick shout out from Leslie. She's like, woohoo, regarding the Boulder, Colorado.gov website.
Thanks, Leslie.
And then Richard Barnes, he's asking, are nested sections responsive?
Well, that's a great question. So they can be. That the theming is left entirely up to themers and developers. So that really would just be up to the developer of the site and the developer, specifically the developer of the layouts and the CSS around those layouts, to ensure that those components are responsive, and that they're responsive whether they're nested or not. There's nothing in, I mean, because layout paragraphs works with the layouts that are defined in core, those core layouts will be responsive because they're responsive in core. You know, if you want to make sure that they are responsive for your particular use case, including nesting layouts, that's just something that a themer would have to do. There's really no custom CSS applied to the layouts at all in layout paragraphs. That is all up to the third-party models that are defining the layouts themselves.
Okay. Another question from Vitali: how do you create customized Twig components for paragraphs?
Oh, that's a great question, and I, to be honest, don't know the answer. That's something so we do create components and for paragraphs in our implementations. That's not something that I personally interact with much. I would be happy to pass that question on to anybody on our front-end team who'd be able to answer that. We use Twig components in virtually every project, and I just couldn't tell you much more about it than that. I guess one thing that is relevant, though, is, again, that deals with the particular theme implementation of a site, and kind of the choices that a themer or a developer makes around how to theme a particular site. Layout paragraphs would not interfere with that at all. It would place the paragraph, and whether that paragraph was using a Twig component or just using a Twig template for the paragraph itself, either will work.
And Joshua is asking, do you ever use it in combination with Bootstrap _layout_builder? Also, thank you. We've used it for specific contents within their advancednutrition.org website.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for that. And thanks for the question. No, I have not used this with Bootstrap, with anything in the Bootstrap ecosystem, actually. I have not personally used it with that. There are a few issues in the Drupal.org, in the layout paragraphs issue queue, related to Bootstrap. That might be a great place to look for more info. I know one thing that has come up, there are some requirements around theming for paragraphs. So you can't completely remove all of the HTML or all of the markup from your paragraph templates, because then the builder will have no ability to actually to know what's what and to actually make it work. So you do have to leave the attributes intact, and the layouts also have to have some of those core layout classes in order to present correctly in the builder. I've seen a couple of issues related to that come through in the issue queue, but really couldn't speak directly to the Bootstrap development question.
Okay. Another question from Vitali, and I think he's piggybacking off of the question he initially asked about the customized Twig components. So he's like, yes, right. I mean, let's say, for example, I need to build a CTA banner with image and button. I create paragraph with all required fields. Then I add the paragraph into a section. My question is, if I want to customize the CTA block by adding custom CSS classes, div IDs, and so on, how can I do it?
Yeah, so there are a number of ways. Basically, the exact same way you would do that in any other paragraph-based solution. So there's nothing really custom about layout paragraphs or specific to layout paragraphs that would say, you wouldn't do that differently for layout paragraphs than you would any other paragraph-based solution. And actually, that raises a good question that I just don't know the answer to. I'm not sure if there's a way to style. Yeah, offhand, I'm not sure how you would style a paragraph that was inside of a layout differently than a paragraph that was outside of a layout. Other than, I mean, there's a module on Drupal.org for choosing what custom view mode you might want to use, but there's nothing in layout paragraphs that changes the way theming works for paragraphs. So the styling is still just the same. They're just mapped to regions within a layout. Hopefully that makes sense.
Brian has asked, can you use this to create a paragraph type like text with image that has a 1/3, 2/3 layout, bigger side can be left or right, and supports only text or image on each side, and then drag and drop the content inside that and use layouts to choose whether the larger column is on the left or right? Did you visually get that?
I think so. Yeah, trying to follow the use case exactly. I mean, the goal in layout paragraphs is to, as much as possible, get away from having to have these really specific complex paragraph types. Although an example, well, and to back up for a second, so in previous versions of Drupal, just thinking back to Drupal 7, when we first started using paragraphs, we had paragraph types that were, a paragraph type like 1 image, 2 paragraphs, or 2 images, 1 paragraph. These very specific paragraph types that talked about not just the structure of the content, but how the content should be presented as well. One of the goals of layout paragraphs is to get away from that, make the interface much more expressive, and give tools to content creators to very easily build those things up. That said, I think so is the answer. I mean, I think so. You can, an example of a more complex paragraph type would be this masthead paragraph. It's not terribly complicated, but it does have a number of very specific fields that build up this single component. So I think so, and I think maybe if that might be a good thing to throw in the issue queue also with that specific use case, just to ask for more details on that.
Another question by Don Weaver: why use layout paragraph versus layout builder?
Great question. Really glad to see that question, and I'm surprised it's so far down on the list. To be honest, that's something that we get asked a lot, and really early, often get asked that really early. So layout builder, which is in core, as I'm sure most people are aware, is a fantastic site. In our view, is a fantastic site builder tool. It really excels at creating layouts that preserve across an entire site, that say how different content types should be rendered, what fields belong in what region, and then also allow a site builder to kind of break out of that when they want to. Layout builder can also be used to create more complex marketing pages. For us, the interface for layout builder and the range of options, the complexity of options, seems much more geared toward site builders and developers. And with that in mind, it's something that our development team uses. And in most of our projects, where we're using layout paragraphs, we are also using layout builder. We would typically use layout builder, again, to structure the layout of the site itself, kind of the framework around the content area. But then layout paragraphs, by contrast, really is just a content editing tool. It's really designed to empower editorial staff, marketing staff to quickly, easily build pages by dragging and dropping a library of components. So the big distinction for us is site builder role versus the editorial or marketing role.
Okay, next question. Can we add our custom CSS classes to layout columns?
Yes. Yeah, and that's provided by the layout API in Drupal. So when you define a layout, and you would define a layout in code and define, I can't remember if in the configuration file, if you pointed at a CSS file, or if you actually pointed a library. But either way, yes, you can customize. All of that is provided by innate Drupal APIs, and something that's used by layout paragraphs, but not something that's specific to layout paragraphs.
Okay, next question. How was the media library integrated? Are images preloaded in an internal directory?
In this example, so media library, you can integrate media library. The short answer is however you want to. So the media library and media integration would be provided just through typical Drupal fields. So the fields, a media field on your paragraph type, presumably. What we just looked at a minute ago with, let's see here, if we go back to the content screen and hit edit and add an image, or if we edit this image, I'm not even sure offhand. So these are just images that are on my local machine. This, I think, is using the inline entity form display for that, but there's no limitation from layout paragraphs and how that's set up. Again, that purely relies on the way the field is set up with the specific paragraph. And all of that would be if you go into paragraph types and then manage the fields of the specific paragraph and take a look at that field. In this case, this is the media reference field. It references the image reference, the image media type. We'd have to go manage the image media type to kind of see all that works. But there's no limitation from layout paragraphs. It just works with whatever is already there.
Okay, Aaron Staker is asking, how does this compare to Gutenberg or other approaches such as Acquia's Site Studio?
That's a great question. Yeah, another one we get quite a bit. So the big difference, I mentioned this just briefly in the beginning, and it was interesting. I just was having a conversation with somebody the other day where I heard this kind of echoed back. The big difference with solutions like Gutenberg is that, well, Gutenberg specifically sits on top of really an open text field and uses essentially short codes for rendering content and saves all of that data, all of the layout data and all of the content, saves it into a single text field in the database. So it's a very sort of custom, proprietary is not the right word, but it's a very, ultimately it's all dumped in as text and then kind of formatted for the user and formatted for the editor. And it's all very specific to Gutenberg itself. Layout paragraphs sits on top of this kind of structured content model of paragraphs and paragraph types. So because of that, if you ever decided to disable it, you can disable it easily and you can move away from layout paragraphs. It's just a collection of paragraphs. It still adheres to all the great features that Drupal provides around structured content is available, and it works with those constructs natively without having to add something else different. That's again just managing formatted code that ultimately gets dumped into an open field. In that way, it reminds me a little bit also of some of the work happening with CK Editor 5. So CK Editor 5 has some really just incredibly powerful, really easy to use tools for managing, the free-form content within a text field. Really awesome stuff. The challenge from my view is if that gets pushed too far, we end up with just kind of a mess of markup in a single text field. And, this is kind of hyperbole, but if that goes too far, it's almost just like, breaking some of the great features in a content management system, again, around structured content. Makes it harder to manage permissions, makes it harder to migrate content, makes it harder to, build third-party applications, et cetera.
Okay, Mohammed.
And I can't speak to Acquia's Site Studio. Sorry, real quick. I'm not sure. My understanding is that Acquia's Site Studio is proprietary and subscription-based, and that that's probably the biggest difference. Is that layout paragraphs is not. Layout paragraphs is really a formatter and a widget. Ultimately, that's how it presents, as like a formatter and a widget installed on a Drupal site.
Okay, and the next question from Mohammed is, this module is really only a wrapper for adding paragraphs. It uses Layout API and adheres to how a developer would build and register layouts in Drupal core. It's great though, and much needed in the Drupal community.
Thank you, Mohammed. That's really well said. I wish I had read that earlier to answer some of the earlier questions, but that's exactly right. That's exactly what it is. I appreciate the comment. But yeah, well said.
And Joshua, he's agreed, great module and talk. I would only reemphasize integration with Bootstrap layouts as we build a ton of Bootstrap sites, thus really want to avoid using core layouts at all costs.
Yeah, so that's a great comment and a great question. And I know given the prevalence of and just the incredibly wide use of Bootstrap, that would be important. The only requirement for that, again, with layout paragraphs, is that a few key classes are added to the layouts themselves so that the system understands that they are in fact layouts. Early on, I remember seeing some issues again around this in the issue queue on the layout paragraphs module on Drupal.org. And I just don't recall the status, but I think very worst case, adding functionality in your custom implementation just with a theme hook to add the required classes would be a very fast, very simple fix for making that work in the builder interface. In the front end, it should work just fine. So the only issue is making sure that the builder can do what it needs to do to provide, the interface that it provides to end users. One other goal, as we're saying too, is one other goal of layout paragraphs is to require as few alterations or customizations of the paragraph templates as possible, so that what you see in the front end is really, really close to what you see in the editing experience. So we're not adding a ton of classes. It's really just a very few classes that are in line with what's expected from core. But other than that, like none of the layouts, we're not using any core layouts on our own website. We're not using core layouts, to my knowledge, on client websites. All of the layouts we're using are either custom or provided by some other third-party module. So there's no close integration or coupling with that. And I might even argue, I haven't looked at this too close enough to know this for sure, but if those classes are missing, that might be something worth asking about, both in the layout paragraphs and Bootstrap layout modules related to Bootstrap layouts in the issue queues as well, because they're so widely used in other Drupal systems.
And two more questions. Jess Derry, hey Jess. What was the name of the module that you mentioned that allowed you to pre-configure styles, or was it custom?
Yeah, it's a module called Style Options. It is available now on Drupal.org. There's a dev release on Drupal.org, and would love to see more adoption of that. We've been using it for a number of our sites. It's still really early in development, so things are shifting pretty quickly. But Style Options provides the ability for themers to define styles in YAML configuration files. So you can set up in a really centralized way in your theme all of the different styles that would apply to different paragraph types. In the past, we've used various fields. We were using classy paragraphs for a while. We've used taxonomy terms, etc., to allow for styling of paragraphs in that way, or to allow for custom styles to be attached to paragraphs in that way. And we just found it to be a little unwieldy. Once you make, if you decide you want to add a style, one style to your paragraph, you have to go into 15 different paragraph content types, re-add that style capability, etc. Style Options provides a centralized way of doing that. Again, really early in development, but would love to see folks contributing in the issue through there too.
And the last question from Don Weaver: do you define a custom or minimal predator for these paragraphs?
I'm not sure I understand the question actually. So, CK editor. Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha. Got it. Yeah, great question. Makes a lot more sense. So you can. I don't know if we have or not. I don't think so. I think this site I just spun up, like I said, a couple hours ago, and I think this is just using the default CK editor styles right out of Drupal core. You can customize those to be whatever you want. It will just use what's on the site. With the product I mentioned earlier, Mercury, we are integrating that with CK Editor 5, and that's a little bit different. So you get this CK Editor 5, and then we're also adding a layer of customization on top of that for this in-place editing. It's a little bit different than Quick Edit, similar, but a little different. It's specific to layout paragraphs. But this is just using the CK Editor 5 profile defined in the text formats of the site. So it's nothing, again, nothing specific to layout paragraphs. Whatever you you configure as the rich text editor for your site will work with layout paragraphs.
Okay, I think that, well, we have, when will Mercury be available?
Oh, great question. So Mercury is available. Mercury is a customized version of layout paragraphs, and it's really I should say I guess a bundled collection of modules and configuration on top of, or that includes layout paragraphs, that right now is a part of our internal distribution and something that we're rolling out to clients. The best way to get more info about that is just reach out to us on the form that's on the page on our site, aten.io/Mercury. Would love to follow up with you about more info there. The real goal with Mercury is to push the authoring experience as far as we can to make that as really responsive and seamless as possible for, again, editors and marketers. So a lot of the customizations there also depend on really specific site instances. But that's something that we're installing as a service at this point.
Well, thank you. Awesome presentation. I think it's been a while since we've gone 10 minutes over our time for the webinar. So
thank you, and thanks everybody for being here, for checking this out. I'll just throw this up on my screen real quick. You can learn more about Mercury at aten.io/Mercury, more about layout paragraphs, drupal.org/project/layout paragraphs. Would love to see even more participation in the issue queue there. Feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions. Would love to clarify or discuss any of this further. We're definitely in feedback mode on a lot of this, especially with Mercury Editor, and reaching out to folks just to get as much feedback as we can and continue to drive some of these improvements with the authoring experience. So thank you, Nika, and all the folks at Drupal for Gov, and thanks everybody for checking this out.
And happy holidays, everybody, and see you in the new year.
Happy holidays. Bye now.